Mm-hmm.
You can, in React, if you're going to use if you're going to make a separate JavaScript file for helper functions, should it be any JavaScript or JSX?
If it's not a component, if it's helper function, it should be just JS. Yeah. Cool. So let's look at this project. Let's fire it up and see if I finished it. I think I did. And then let's see how it works. So this was basically, this is a solution to the lab that you were working on. This is like my solution. So it looks like this. Oh wait, not this one. This is not the one that you were doing, right? You're doing a prettier version of this one. So it's not this one. Let me go here. Oh, I think I see.
That's a random CSV.
Yeah.
If you want to affect 4 different classes with the same content, how would you put that in the same bracket?
So you want to affect components or divs that have 4 different classes?
Yeah.
You can separate them by commas in your CSS to select. There's the first class comma, the second class comma, the third class. Yeah. I think it's this one. Yeah. Cool. It is this one. I think it looks a little bit weird on mine because they have like my screen is a smaller resolution because of the projector, but it's roughly something like this, right? Cool. So let's look at our. Actually, you can. Well, so I already gave you the tree of what this is gonna look, of how we can think about this app. We have that in here. Join pursuit. React. So React introduction one. So the idea is for us to have sort of a component tree that looks like this, where we have app being the main component, then we have 4 other sort of big components, which is the Navbar, the user profile, the post, and the contacts. And this, you could think of them as, these are going to be children of app, right? So if we go with that, then when we look at here, I'm going to show you my app.js. Oh, I thought I had put this in a components folder, but it seems like I didn't. Wait, maybe I have to refresh this. Right, I never opened the other one. Okay, let me close this one. Here. So if we think about that, No, we are in the right folder. So when we look at app.js, your app should roughly look something like this, with the main 4 components, right? The navbar, the user profile, the post, and the contacts. Right? You can ignore this for now. Any questions about like this part? Cool. This makes sense, right? So then let's look at oh, this is gonna be super helpful. Let's do this now. There is some React developer tools that we're gonna be using because they allow us to inspect the React component structure basically. So go to just in Google type React Dev Tools, and you're gonna get this Chrome extension. Just install it right now. I don't have to install it because I already have it, but install this extension. And then I'm going to show you how to inspect the React component tree. React Developer Tools, Chrome extension. If you're on Firefox, there is also the Firefox counterpart to this. So once you have that installed, then we can inspect our app. So if we go back here to our app, let me just, wait, what happened? Oh, I killed the app. Once you have that the developer tools installed, well, you can inspect basically any React website or any React app, and it's going to be a tool that is going to be super helpful for debugging our React apps. So in here, once you have your React app on, you can just right-click inspect the same way we do regularly, and then on here, maybe around here in this bar, I have to go here. There is this 2 tabs here. Components and profiler that you probably find just on this bar at the top. Just like because I have less resolution, it appears here. Then that lets you see this. Lets you see basically your component structure. So right-click inspect, and on this bar here, there is one tab called components. There is a new tab called components that the React Developer Tools enables you to use. And this looks different, a little bit different from when I was learning, but it's basically the same thing. Like you can see the app, and this is actually where I took the screenshot from that I share on the README. But it basically shows the app that is the main component. Then we have the navbar, and the cool thing is that it also allows for highlighting in the screen. So here, if I hover over the navbar, it's going to show me the div that corresponds to that, right? Which is that top part. Then the user profile, that is this lower right side. Then the post, which is much more lower here. And each individual post, the contacts, and every single contact user card. And here, sort of like one of the questions that we got yesterday was like, how is the how is the contact user card sort of connected to app? And here on the right side, we can see that the contact user card is rendered by contacts, right? The parent component, and the parent component of contacts is app. So this is how we're able to see the contact user card. So if we go in here and inspect, or any questions regarding the React developer tools, once we start using like state, which is what we're going to learn today, this area here will be much more helpful. Yeah. Yes.
I really like how it shows you your margin and your padding with different colors.
Mm-hmm.
So you use a little bit of both for my spacing.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Any other questions maybe about the React developer tools? Yes, Joey.
What's the difference between production build and development build? Because Firefox is asking.
The way in which you're gonna be developing app will be like a development build, where a production build is basically your app packaged for real world use, basically for deploying it to the internet. For the most part, we're gonna be in development mode. Yeah. Cool. We're gonna. So it seems like the main, or like the hardest part was the CSS part, but anything else about React that maybe we're confused about, or that maybe we have questions about? I can show you here, so let me give you sort of like a walkthrough what we have here. Again, there's those 4 main components. Then if we go to Navbar, let's open the Navbar here. Navbar is literally just a div with 3 buttons. That's all Navbar is. We make it look horizontal with CSS. Then let's look at user profile. User profile is a component that is written as a class. Remember that we have a render function that returns JSX. And in here, we just have a div with the class user profile for styling later. That div just has an image and some other div for a description, where we have the name of the person, maybe the role, and lorem ipsum. Right. Then posts is just a div that has an h2 and is rendering post components. And if we go to the post components, then we see that post component is just a div with a title and a lorem ipsum paragraph. And then let's go back to posts. We see that post is rendering 3 posts. That's the number of posts that we see here, literally inside. So that's that. Let's go on contacts. Contacts is just a div that renders a header and 4 contact user card. If we go to look at what contact user card is, we see that it's actually very similar to the user profile. It's just a div with an image, with a specified height and width, and a description, basically. That's it. That ends up, if we remove all the CSS, let's sort of like comment this one here, see what that changes. We're going to be left with this. And then let's think maybe about like the grid layout. So we want to have, or any questions about the React structure, components, how to create components, how to import them, export and use them. Cool. So let's think about sort of like a grid. So we're gonna have a Navbar here at the top. Then we're gonna have a user profile section here, maybe with. Actually, we have a little bit different word. We have something like this. Then we have some post area, and then here we have these guys. And then here we have the contact list, basically. So how could we divide this into a grid, and how can we position the elements? I'll need some help from the people that got the grid to work. How do you go about that? Cameron, you do it.
So I basically use what's it called? Use grid template or area. Yeah, I use grid template areas to basically map out how many navbars I want per column on the first row, and then as I go down, I have that many rows. So I have 3 rows literally going down, and then 6 rows across, and then I would name for each section what
Where the element
class I want in each section.
So like, what is how many columns and how many rows does your grid have?
So there's 6 columns and 3 rows.
6 columns. Okay. So basically, you probably have like a row here, then a row here.
Yep.
And then 6 columns.
Yeah, to kind of like give more flexibility. So like the user takes over 4 columns across, and then the contact takes over 2 columns.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So you basically have 2 columns here.
Yeah.
And then 4 here.
Yeah.
1,
That's
2,
just
3, 4, 6, 7. Oh, I did one more, but that doesn't really matter. Yeah, so if we think of the lines, so this is like line 1, 2, 3. This is like line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is basically the grid that we need. Once we have the grid, then we can position the elements on those places. So let's do this. Let me erase what I had like on my app CSS. Actually, let's leave this one and see how it would work as well. So let's say we want that grid. So to what component do we want to apply that grid? To what div? The app. The app. We want the grid to be in the app. So I'm just going to grab the app by class, which is app, because we have this class set on that component. And then we can say grid template. Let's do it explicitly, rows. And then we basically have 6, so we could do, do you remember repeat? You could do repeat 1 fraction 6 times. Let's see if this works. To create 6 rows. So there seems to be no change here. Let's inspect. Let's see, we have, we don't have the CSS applying because I had commented out here. Let's have it applying one more time. No apparent change, we have repeat. I forgot how to use repeat. So I think is maybe then the number first, the number of times, and you want one fraction each. And then that works. So let's see if this is indeed a grid with 6 rows. Oh, thank you very much, Josette. I forgot to say display grid, otherwise this is not going to apply. And then we have this. We have app being 6 rows basically. We have 6 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and some extra at the bottom that are not being used. And we have 4 because, well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 components. So the first 4 rows are going to be occupied by those divs, by those elements, and the other ones are just left empty. But let's say we also want 3 columns. How many columns we wanted?
6 columns.
Oh, 6 columns, 3 rows. So let's do maybe 3 of here, and then columns. We want seat 6. Let's repeat 6 at one fraction, and let's see what this gives us. Yeah, this looks interesting. So we have our, because we now specified how many columns we wanted. When everything will fit like in the first row, because remember that when you're laying stuff out in the grid, well, if you don't have columns, the element will be just laid out in one single column, and in as many rows as needed. But if you have columns, then the elements will be laid out sort of like this, right? Where the first element is going to go here, the second one here, the third one here, and so on. Actually, I think it's more like here. It doesn't go there; it just comes back here. Comes back here, and then it goes back, and so on. So that's why we have sort of this behavior. But then we can say, I want the navbar to occupy all the first row. So we can say, if we have the navbar has a class as well. And it has an associated CSS. So let me open that CSS, and let's look at it here. So what this CSS is doing is just setting the navbar to flex, adding some padding in the background to basically make it look the button center, and give it the look that it has. But here we can say, I want to place this item on grid. So Cameron mentioned grid area, which we can do to position like both rows and columns. We could also use like grid column. Then I can say here, I want this to go from line 1, this line. I want the navbar to go from line 1. I got this messed up. Line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can say I want my navbar to go from column line 1 to column line 7. And let's see if this does any. And then we get, let's see if this is applying. Then we have our navbar here, taking in from line 1 to line 7. Let's play with it here. Let's go like 6. Yeah, so we can see how we can control what columns those will expand to. So here, let's say we want it to line 7. Let's leave it there. Now, we want, so this is sort of like starting to be complicated with so many columns. In fact, we don't need so many columns. Like we just need, if we think about it, we just need 2 columns, like right here, where this area can be like 1 column, and then this area here, another column. So let's get rid of the extra lines that we don't really need. And let's turn our app into just 2 of 1 fraction. Let's go here. Template columns, we only need 2. Rows, we will need 3. So we end up with rows we need 3, columns we need 2. And we end up with this. Let's go back to the navbar. Now I am going to say from 1 to 3. Let's change that here. And we just got rid of those extra lines. We have our 2 columns. Now I think it will be better if we also specify how tall do we want this column to be, these rows to be. This one is like too tall, right? Remember that by default, grid will try to make, when we do like 1 fraction on our rows, grid will try to distribute all the available space evenly, and we end up with all the rows having the same space. So maybe we don't even need to specify the rows. Let's see what we have with this. Okay, so we get this layout that I was talking about here, where we have 2 columns and 3 rows. And then we can see how I said the navbar, I wanted navbar to occupy all this space, right? Because we did that with saying in the navbar, grid columns span from line 1 to line 3, right? These are the lines 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, no, not 1, 2, 2, 3, and 1, 4. So we set to the navbar span from line 1 to line 3. Shar, I hope you're paying attention since this was the CSS part. Then in here we see that all the other content will just get laid out from here, then here. So we have the other elements that we have is the profile photo was up here. Then after that, like in the markup, what we have next is the contacts, right? No, the posts. So the posts end up here, and then the contacts end up here. But the power of grid is in letting you change the layout of your page, and also to position the elements in that page on whatever columns or rows you want. So after here, what we can do is, then we want to say, oh, I want, we actually want contacts to be on this right side. So there is a few things we could do. One is we could move like contacts to be like before posts, and that will like put the contacts in here. We could also say it with CSS, sort of like force it to move. I feel like in this case, I'm just gonna make on app. I'm just gonna put contacts before posts. Contacts before posts, and we end up with this, right? We end up with the contacts almost already where we need them, and the user profile and the post underneath. So from here, we just need to do, let's lower this. What are some of the options that we have if we want to make this one sort of like not as tall as this is? Yes, do this.
You can span the contact cards down one row down, so that way it'll push the posts upwards.
So let's try that. So what Douglas is suggesting is let's have contacts start at line 2 and go to line 4. So let's select here contacts to sort of like try it out here first. And let's say grid row from line 2 to line 3. Oh, sorry. To line 4. And and then we end up with a flip version of it. Oh, I guess I'll need to also specify the grid column then.
So the app.css?
This will be on. I wouldn't put it on app.css. I'll put it in the specific file, the specific CSS file for the component.
Contacts.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Then I want this to be in 2 to 3. And then here we end up with what we wanted basically, which is the profile here, the contacts in here, and then the post here. Let's copy the CSS. For contacts. Oh, I think. Then we can refresh the page just to make sure, and we have what we wanted basically. Yeah. Yeah. So with this, what I'm saying is I want the contacts element to go from row number 2 or row line 2 to row line 4. And I want that to be not only positioned in the row, I also want to position in the column that starts on line 2 and goes to line 3. If you haven't gotten through like the CSS, like grid CSS tutorial on CSS tricks, it's highly recommended.
For Flex, that one.
There's one for Flex and there's another one for Grid. The complete guide to Grid CSS tricks. It's really good. Yes.
Someone with the garden. Yeah, or Great Garden.
So that was like,
I like that.
what is it called?
I think
Grid Garden? No, so Grid Garden is the game. The other one is Flex Froggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are good for understanding how the grid works. Yes.
So when you did grid row equals like 2 divided by 4, it's pretty much the context is gonna exist from row 2, 3, and 4, right?
Sort of, but we have to like move away from like thinking in columns, or at least in this case, we don't really mean columns, we mean lines. So if you draw the grid, it ends up that grid row 2 divided by 4. What it really means is from the second row line, which is this one. So this is line 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I want contacts to go from line 2, row line 2 to row line 4.
Okay, so they exist in 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. When we make a grid, and this is also I think said here. It's important to think of the lines specifically if you wanna position elements. So we can see it here. So the first line, the second line, the third line, these are column lines and these are row lines. Cameron, you had a question?
I was curious to hear navigation in CSS.
Yeah. So the Navbar CSS is just a flex, and we get that like alignment to the right if we do justified content to the end of the flex container. Yeah, well,
No, the way I did mine, I did like most of the CSS in like the app CSS because like I didn't like think that like all the CSS could be like connected.
mm-hmm.
You see how you did like a separate thing in each CSS for each module?
Yeah. Yeah, this is what I said yesterday about when we're building apps with React, when the apps gets compiled, all the CSS gets put on one file. All the JavaScript gets like also put like in a few files. I think like about 3 files. So yeah, like when we're building apps with React, that process of compilation is all that React code is being converted to plain JavaScript that the browser can understand, and then all that JavaScript gets combined into a few JavaScript files, and the CSS gets put all in one file. Yeah. Other questions about this lab? Cool. So let's take a 5-minute break, and then let's get ready for React State, which is where React gets interesting.